Hello everyone and welcome to this video. My name is Amir Hakmi. I am an AWS Solutions Architect, and today in this video we're going to talk about Q Developer. And Q Developer, for those who don't know, it's the Amazon generative AI powered assistant, specifically for software development. And the focus today is really around how we're going to use Q Developer CLI, which is one way to interact with Q Developer from the CLI directly. So if you just come here and say Q Chat, after you have it set up, eventually you can interact with Q from your computer directly to do something with it. In this case, we're going to demo how you're going to build your MCP server and integrate the MCP server with Q itself. And on April 29, 2025, Q Developer CLI, they announced the support of the Model Context Protocol. And for those who don't know what an MCP is really a standard way, it's an open source that enable generative AI assistants and tools to actually interact with an external data sources, APIs, or it could be other tools that you have available to enrich the conversation and kind of improve the experience for you as someone who's using this generative AI assistant. Again, it's an open protocol, and you can find more documentation around it if you visit modelcontextprotocol.io. And in this video, I'll try to avoid diving deep into an MCP. There are plenty of other videos that does a much better job than what I'm going to do to cover that. So feel free to expand on the kind of like learning more about an MCP in general. But again, think of it just like a way to host a server or interact with a server that can actually do a specific job. And for the purpose of this demo, again, the intent is to show you how you're going to build the server using Q as the generative AI assistant, and actually integrate the same server that you're going to build with Q itself, so you can use it down the road. So the purpose of the what I'm gonna demo is really something that I put some efforts into last year. I posted a video on YouTube. It kind of talk about how to build a stock market analyzer application using Amazon Bedrock Studio. And just a quick recap, Bedrock Studio is just a way for you to build generative AI applications with almost like low code to no code. And that was last year. Fast forward to this year, all of that is, in my opinion, is not needed anymore, because now you can just use one tool from your machine to build an entire application, to build an entire MCP, integrated with the same tool, so you can actually do the same exact thing as this application that I'm showing in this video from last year. So again, the idea is we need to build an MCP server that will be hosted on my laptop here. We're going to build it with Q. And then we're going to integrate Q to actually interact with this MCP server. And what this MCP server is literally doing, just query and a stock market analyzer, a stock market API to query a stock market price for a particular ticker, let's say Amazon or Apple or any other ticker. And then bring the results back to Q so you can actually interact with it. So with all that being said, the way you're going to interact with Q is as any other generative AI tools out there. It's going to use natural language as input, where you're going to provide instruction by saying, I want to build a simple stock market analysis tool that can check the current prices. And I'm telling it here that you will create an MCP server using FastMCP. It's an open source that really makes it easy to build an MCP server. I'm providing some details where I'm saying, first, you need to review the documentation in here to understand MCP more, and I can show you where I got this information, which I will cover that in a minute. But let me just continue here. Number two, I'm saying go ahead and research the documentation for more details on how to set up an MCP server. and this, and then and by the way, I already have two MCP servers configured with my Q instance so far. One of them is called MCP Core, and one of them is called MCP Documentation, AWS Documentation, and these are available in this GitHub repo where you can just download and configure them with Q, so you can interact with all these different servers. And the one in interest for me here is the AWS Documentation MCP server. It's a way for Q to actually go and interact with the AWS documentation, grab all the details, so it can build something more tuned or more suitable for AWS cloud in general, or all the services that we have. Just going back here, I'm saying number 3, create a tracking file to keep track of your progress, which is a good thing to have. Then I'm just telling it like what it needs to do to create the necessary directory, set up a virtual environment for Python. You don't need to worry about this in details, but just to kind of keep things clean. Number 6 is to implement the simple MCP server that does one thing today, or as of now, which is getting the current stock price. And then number 7, I'm saying you need to configure Q to actually use this custom MCP. Pretty much configure yourself, Mr. Q, to use this custom MCP server that we're going to build. Just going back to number 1, the reason I put it there is just because initially I started without really providing this item in here. I kind of starting from number 2, and I kind of struggled a little bit to kind of make Q build exactly what I'm looking for. And then I went to this documentation page around building an MCP with LLMs, and I noticed that they actually have a recommendation to prepare some documentation and feed it to the generative AI tool, in this case Q in question. And it's pretty much saying that you need to copy this LLM full.txt, which has a lot of documentation in here and details that could be beneficial to properly build an MCP. And then it's also saying that you need to have the Python SDK repository if you're using Python to build it, which is more input for the LLM for Q to build to properly build your MCP server. So again, what I did is just by simply moving this documentation into my local machine, and I'm just put it here under this QCLI demo under documents, and I just pasted this documentation in here, and I told Q that go ahead and review this before you even start. So what we're going to do is just copy this prompt and go to QCLI and just paste it in here and just say go. Yeah, so what Q is going to do here is just going to look at the prompts and try to put a plan together to actually start implementing the MCP server. So as you can see here, first it kind of looked at the folder QCLI demo / documents to read this README and the LLM-fold.txt. And it's just going to use the built-in tool that it has to actually start reading this information to get more details. And then it's just going to, let me just put this next to each other. And now what it's going to do is to actually start searching the documentation, the AWS documentation, for phrases like QCLI MCP server integration. So I'm just going to say go ahead and yes, and notice here how Q is interacting with you. So it's trying to get your permissions, so you can either say yes, or if you want to trust it like always in this session, you can just say T, and I'm just going to go ahead and say T for now, so it doesn't kind of like require my permission for every single interaction for this particular tool in this particular session. Again, it's kind of reading the documentation here to get more details, and now it's declaring that I have a good understanding of MCP and how to integrate with Amazon QCLI. So now it's going to create a tracking file, and it's paying attention to step number 3 here. I'm just gonna say go ahead and create this tracking file. And while this is happening, let me just bring my my Visual Studio, and let me just open the folder where it's doing all the fun stuff. not this one, and just let me just open it here, and let me bring back the CLI interface. And now it's just wanted to, so it created it, and it's just wanted to write to the progress.md. Just gonna go ahead and hit yes, and you will see here as it's interacting, it's actually inserting all these details in here. So and I'm just gonna say yep, go ahead and yes. Let me just open this. This is the progress.md that I created. Excuse me. And now it's just going to move on to number 5, which is to set up the Python virtual environment. Don't worry about it too much. Just a way to keep things organized on my machine when it comes to Python development. And here it's asking me to, it wants to create a requirements.txt, which will include all the all the dependencies that it's needed to run the server. I'm just gonna say go ahead and yes. and it's going to install the dependencies. Again, it's kind of interacting with me, and it's asking for my permission, and it's just going to install the dependencies here, and you will see all the libraries that it's needed are being kind of popping up in here, which they are needed to run the MCP server on your local machine. And it will take another few seconds, most likely. So let's wait and see. And here we go. It kind of completed it at this point. And from there, my assumption that it will go to the next step to actually start creating the MCP server itself, which is will be written in Python. So if I just look at the stock market MCP, it will most likely spit out first the code for the server, and it's just going to ask me to review it. I'm just going to trust it for now and say go ahead, yes, and it's going to write it to my folder, and it's going to insert the kind of the Python script itself in here. And then from there, it wants to run this chmod command to make the stock market server.py executable. And from there, now it's kind of moving to the last piece, which is the configuring Amazon Q to actually use this MCP server. So here it's actually asking me to make a directory under .aws/AmazonQ, and what I'm gonna say, directory already exists, just modify the file mcp.json, just to kind of give it more instructions on what it needs to actually do here. So now it's just probably gonna review what's in there. It will say, now I see an mcp.json. It's going to read it, and by the way, this is what the mcp.json look like. And right now, as I mentioned earlier, I already have 2 servers that is configured. One is the core and one is the documentation. And now what it's supposed to do is just to add another one, is to append another server at the bottom to show that it's actually able to interact with the server that's going to create. I'm just going to say try again. Believe it had some issues, so I'm not sure what is that or why is that. So let me just try again, which is something I've been having here and there. I wouldn't say it's consistent, but every once in a while I will get an error saying that Q is having some trouble using these different tools. And from what I'm hearing, it's most likely some sort of like a permission issue, but I'm not really sure why or what's causing this particular error. Again, it's very spotty, it's not very consistent, so many times when I try again, it will work eventually. It's not the best experience, I would agree, but it's something that we can probably kind of get over with. And so here it kind of like decided to include or to append. So again, this is my MCP servers. I have the core, I have the documentation, those are already existing. And then it added a third one, which is the stock market analysis server. It's asking me for permissions to make it happen. So I'm just gonna say yes. And you can see here, kind of right away, kind of popped it up and said, now you have a server that's available. Now it's technically it had configured itself to use the server. And let's see what's gonna do next. Next, what it did, it's actually updating the readme.md. I'm just gonna say go ahead. And it's creating it. And if you just go back to my original folder, so this is the readme that it kind of put together, and it's kind of providing more details on how to set it up. And yeah, that's it. Let's take a look what it's gonna do next. It's probably updating the progress.md because it wants to kind of update what's happening or what's the latest, what it's kind of have done so far. So again, it's just going to update this document for me. So now it's saying, this is what I've done for you. I created the MCP server, and you should be able to start using that. Now, one thing I noticed here, it's good to actually ask a few questions before you proceed. So you would say, do I need to start the server, or should I assume that the server already started? So let's actually get some clarification from Q. And here it says, no, you don't need to manually start the server. So what it's saying here is that the mcp.json config that it kind of put together tells Q CLI to automatically start the server when needed. So it says when you run Q chat and ask questions about the stock prices, Q will recognize that. So let's validate if that's true. So let's go ahead and open a new terminal, and let's start a new session. Let's say Q chat, and let's go. So here, the first thing you would notice that now it's recognizing that there are 3 MCP servers initialized, and it's trying to start all these servers. So it started the first 2, which is the documentation, the core, and it's most likely trying to initialize the third one. And here we go. It actually says 3 out of 3 MCP servers initialized. And again, if I just go back to my json.mcp.json, that's the third one that it's actually added, that it's saying I have a stock market server.py in there, and it was able to kind of initialize it. So moment of the truth, let's try it out. So if I say here, what is the stock price for Amazon? Technically, what Q is going to look for is say what tools I have access to. And interestingly, here enough, it kind of decided to use the core MCP server, which is a way to kind of understand the prompt. So I'm just going to say, go ahead, understand this prompt, even though it's simple enough, but let's give it the benefit of the doubt here. And then it kind of said, okay, now I need to run this another tool, which is to get the stock market price. And it's kind of providing the ticker for it, which is Amazon. And it's just asking me for my permission to make it happen. I'm just going to say, go ahead and yes. And technically, okay, so it worked. That's amazing. So what really happened here, just to kind of recap, we have this server, the stock market MCP, that's technically we built entirely using Q by just providing this natural language prompt. And we configured it with Q CLI as an MCP server. And then we started a new session and we just asked Q CLI to actually query and leverage this MCP server to query an external API. In this case, it's using Y Finance, and Y Finance is Yahoo Finance, to actually pass over an API to get the price of of a particular stock. In this case, it's Amazon, and it actually made it happen. That's pretty much what I really wanted to show. You can always go back and just try to improve on your MCP server, and you have your original chat interface here, and you can actually go ahead and say, can we extend or expand on the MCP server to provide more in-depth analysis, and it will put a proposal for you together to actually make it happen. And it's just going to say, this is how we can improve on it. So maybe you provide, you want to extend it to get more like sentiment analysis or to get historical stock market details. All that can happen here as you're actually interacting with the QCLI interface. That's it, folks. Really what I wanted to show you, that with MCP, things are really getting out of control, I would say. Definitely be concerned, not concerned, but be more excited about this technology. And I encourage all of you to play around with this and make sure that you have a full grasp on how it works. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me, whether on YouTube or if you find me on LinkedIn. I'll post my LinkedIn in there. And I'm happy to kind of interact with you and get in touch as well. But that's it, folks. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope this video was helpful. And please take care. Bye bye.